Transcripts and recordings of the podcast may not be used for any purpose without the direct written permission of the podcast owner. Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah M. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Light It Up. I am your host, Dr. Aginah M. So excited about today's episode of Light It Up. We are still in the midst of Women's History Month. And this time around, I wanted to highlight a trailblazer in her field, someone that I've known since she was a little girl, which means that I'm dating myself. But Dr. Shannon Goode is my guest today. She and I we'll talk about how far back we go, but she did attend Morgan Park High School, which, as you all know, is my alma mater. And I always love to highlight all of the great work that my fellow Morgan Park Mustangs are doing. But Dr. Shannon Goode is a primary care sports medicine physician, and she also serves as the team physician at Xavier University. But before she became Dr. Shannon Goode, she attended Howard University, the Mecca, the real HU, and Meharry Medical College. And we're gonna get into her academic and her professional journey as we have our conversation on this week's episode. But welcome to Light It Up, Dr. Shannon Goode. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
So excited, so excited. What people don't know is that I don't know how many years younger you are than me. So we won't talk about that. But your dad, who I think is just probably a mentor to everybody in Chicago, because when I'm on Facebook and some of my friends are commenting and I see I'm like, Mr. Clemens. But your dad and my dad were really good friends, and your dad looked out for me when I had my internship and my very first paying job as a college graduate with the Cook County Sheriff's Department. And he just thinks so highly of you. We still talk. I check in with him occasionally. He is just such an amazing man who raised an amazing daughter. So I'm really excited to have you here.
Happy to be here.
So let's kind of just, I guess, jump right into it. I mentioned that you are a doctor. You are, your specialty is sports medicine, correct?
Right.
So why don't you, we all know that there are very few Black physicians, Black female physicians, and I don't know what the percentage is of those who specialize in sports medicine, but I am curious to know, when you were, in high school and you were preparing to apply to college, did you know that you wanted to go into the medical field? And specifically, did you know that you wanted to go into sports medicine? Because you were an athlete in high school as well.
Right. So I knew I wanted to go into sports medicine, but I didn't know I would be a physician. Mm-hmm. So I was obsessed with the University of Miami. That was my school, Go Canes. And in 2003, it was the Fiesta Bowl between University of Miami and Ohio State. And my father and I were going at it because he's Big Ten, he ref Big Ten, and he was not having me go to Miami. And I'm rooting for Miami, but during the game, Willis McGahee had a season ending. It was end of the season, but a pretty big injury. Mm-hmm. And everybody ran out on the field. And I was like, ooh, I want to run out on the field. And then a month later, I ended up getting injured and had a torn meniscus in my knee and had to have surgery. And that was the first time I was really introduced to the world of sports medicine. I did research on majors at University of Miami, and they had an athletic training major.
Mm-hmm.
And so literally, if I still have the yearbook, if you go to that 2005 yearbook from Morgan Park, in the little senior section, it says Shannon Clemens is going to attend the University of Miami, and she's either going to become an athletic trainer or orthopedic surgeon. Mm-hmm. And with what I do now, I kind of fall right in the middle. But I always knew I wanted to go into sports medicine. But I thought I was going to do athletic training. And so when my father finally checked me and made me realize that he was not sending me to Miami, ended up attending Howard University, and I chose the major of physical therapy because that was the closest major to athletic training that I thought they had. I hadn't even researched majors because I wasn't going to any other school. Mm-hmm. And a guidance counselor who was a friend of my dad's friend's wife, mm-hmm. The friend told me to find her when I got on campus, and I did. And she said, "What's your major?" And I said, "Oh, it's physical therapy." And she said, "You don't sound excited." I said, "Well," I gave her my spiel. I was going to Miami, you know. I said, "I'm really interested in sports medicine." And she said, "We have a sports medicine major, but it's pre-med." And I was like, "Oh, you have that major? Sign me up." Still not thinking I would go to med school. But then in that first year biology class, and it's like 200 other people that look just like me, and everybody was, "I'm gonna be a doctor, I'm gonna be a pharmacist, I'm gonna be a dentist." I caught the bug. Mm-hmm. And first semester, freshman year at Howard, I said, I guess I'm going to med school. Okay. And it kind of just played out that way.
You know, what's interesting is it's so when you listen to people who talk about going to medical school, there's this assumption that you have to major in biology. And I've always thought that to be the major that weeds people out and serves as, I'm going to say, a deterrent to medical school. So do you think that, how were you able, I know you majored in physical therapy. Do you think that when you, in hindsight, do you think that that was the best route for you to take in terms of, you know, your academic journey and going into the profession?
Well, one thing I want to say is you absolutely positively do not have to major in biology or chemistry or physics to go to medical school. I probably know more people that were not science majors that got into medical school. You really just have to take the prerequisites. Mm-hmm. The sports medicine major worked out for me because it really was an exercise physiology major with a minor in chemistry. So I took a lot of movement sciences, kinesiology, exercise physiology, athletic training, a lot of anatomy and physiology-based courses. And I really enjoyed my major. And I say that because when you go to college, you should enjoy what you're studying. And if you don't straight up enjoy biology or chemistry, you probably shouldn't major in it. Because though we study a lot of science in medical school, what you learn in undergrad pretty much has like absolutely nothing to do with what you end up learning in medical school. What you learn in undergrad biochemistry, you probably cover in the first few days of medical school. I actually had lunch with a mentee today who majored in international studies. Mm-hmm. And she decided later on she wanted to go to med school, but she had taken the prerequisites. And that's really all you need is there are certain courses you have to take. You have to take the MCAT to get into medical school. So biology does not have to be the way you have to go to get to medical school.
So glad that you said that, because you're right. That's what people often think. I also had a mentee who majored in, she actually got an MBA, but her undergrad degree was in psychology, and she decided that she wanted to go to medical school. She's in medical school now at the University of Illinois. Mm-hmm. And I thought that her major was completely just out of, but she is doing very, very well. So you're at Howard, the real HU, the Mecca. I'm not going to ask you how undergrad was and how much partying you did, because that does not matter. because you successfully, in fact, I didn't tell people that you graduated magna cum laude from Howard University. So that means that you clearly understand balance and you know how to study and still enjoy your HBCU experience.
Yeah, school comes first. You got
right.
As fun as they are, you got to graduate at some point.
That's right. So what made you decide to attend Meharry for medical school?
So I didn't do that well on the MCAT and actually got waitlisted at every school I applied to. And at the time, Meharry had a post-baccalaureate program that I ended up getting into. And our post-baccalaureate program was affiliated with our med school in that you take courses for that year. If you get a certain GPA and you retake the MCAT and you get a certain score, well, they grandfather you into the first year class. So I'm grateful that Meharry even took a chance on me because I didn't have my pick of where I wanted to go. That was kind of my only option. And in hindsight, and especially now mentoring a lot of medical students, I am so grateful that I ended up at Meharry Medical College because I enjoy med school. There are some days where I say, did I have more fun at Howard or did I have more fun at Meharry? And the reason being because a lot of Black people get deterred from going to HBCUs because they're under the assumption that you're going to go to a university where it's all Black people, and that's not what the world looks like. What they fail to realize is that Black people are the most diverse group of people on the planet. And so by me going to Howard and then subsequently Meharry, I was exposed to people, not only just Black people of all walks of life, but people in general of all walks of life. And I was also in an environment where nobody wanted to see me fail. I remember at Howard, there was a semester where I decided I didn't want to be pre-med anymore. And I went and studied abroad, went to Sydney, Australia, because I still wasn't far away enough from home. And I came back, and one of my girlfriends, who I'm going to her baby shower in May, she pulled me to the side and was like, so did you get that out your system? I said, what are you talking about? She said, before you left, you were saying no med school and all this. And she was like, I wanted to check in and make sure you got back on track because you're going to be a doctor. And so at Howard, nobody was expecting me to fail. Everybody wanted to see me win. And then attending Meharry Medical College, which is another historically Black school. It's all professional school. It's the first medical school for Blacks in the South. It was the same thing. There were 105 of us in my class. And our first quiz, we took a clicker quiz where the clickers have to register with the screen. And only 104 clickers registered. And in that moment, everybody looked around and we knew immediately who was the person that wasn't present. That's how close we were as a family. And after that quiz, and this young man ended up to go become a pastor, so he did leave, but we were very tight-knit, very close. I still have a group chat, a group me on my phone from my post-bac class and my med school class where we still check in with each other. We still let each other know about job opportunities. If somebody's like, hey, I need a Black ophthalmologist in Orlando, I put it in that group chat and somebody's going to get back to me, you know? So Meharry kind of chose me. And I'm forever grateful for that experience.
I'm so glad that you shared your experience and in particular about the HBCU experience and the importance in that, because you know, I attended a PWI, I work at a PWI, and I can tell you my experience was totally different. I wanted to attend an HBCU. And I talk about this quite often. I think I'm still in the back of my mind, just like, oh, but I left Morgan Park at 16 and my dad wouldn't allow me to go away to Hampton University. So, you know, for me, it is, as far as my children are concerned, I was just sharing before we started talking that, you know, we're at the home stretch. HBCUs are where we're going to be. But that environment, I think, is so important for us to be in an environment where you know that people want to see you win, who are going to pull you by your coattail, who are going to And I've often heard people say the same thing, like the world isn't made up of all Black people, but you're right, we are the most diverse. But I think going through K through 12 and all of the different experiences that you encounter, because you don't see teachers who look like you in K through 12. I mean, we have the statistics to show what the demographics are. And that was one of the reasons why my children initially, they were like, I want to go to Stanford and I want to go here. And I said, have you ever thought about an HBCU? I'm so glad I planted that seed just by asking the question. I think they were in 5th grade. And then after that, I took them on the PWI visits. We went to UCLA, we went to Stanford, but ultimately they came back around and decided that an HBCU is where they wanted to be. So I'm hoping as I get ready to ship them off in a few months that they'll really have a good experience and make connections. They're already doing so, like in their group chat. So I can see where that is just so totally different from the experience that I know that I had. I mean,
I'm not gonna lie. When I got to Howard, I was in Wheatley Hall, which was in the Tubman Quadrangle. They have different dorms now.
Mm-hmm.
People might have different experiences, but I was in the Tubman Quadrangle, which was the all freshman girls dorm. My dorm had no AC. I was on the 4th floor. Our elevator. No,
I said no.
It hardly worked. I was in a triple. And it's so funny, my roommate from freshman year of college actually lives in New Orleans, and we're best friends to this day. And she can attest to this. I walked in the room, and my roommates had moved in the night before. And I got in there, and they had set the room up. I cried on the spot because I had visited Miami, and they had the AC. And they had this and they had that. And here I was. And I had visited Howard maybe once. My next door neighbor went there, but she lived somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I cried on the spot. And for like the first 2 days, I was miserable. And within like a week, I was like, oh, this is nice. And I remember like those first few days telling my dad, I'm going to transfer. And he was so mad because when I came home for Thanksgiving, all I could talk about was Howard University. Howard. He was like, no, not after you. I'm like, no, but it was like, it was life changing. And I think the other thing about HBCUs, and I always tell people this, a lot of people are limited in what they can do by what they're exposed to. If you've never seen someone do it, period, you're not even going to know that there's an option to do that. Mm-hmm. And then to break it down even further, if you've never seen someone who looks like you do it, you get even more discouraged. And to spend the 9 years that I did at 2 different HBCUs, to see people that look like us do everything, you name it, I know somebody that looks like me that does it. Mm-hmm. And it was the most exhilarating thing to be around. And it was so motivating. That was the other thing. When you get there, you're not in competition with each other. We're in kind of competition with the world to see we're just going to be great. Mm-hmm. And that enthusiasm and that motivation rubs off on you. So if somebody next to you is like really gunning on something and working really hard, you don't feel like you're in competition with them. If anything, it's like, oh, I can do it too. Mm-hmm. And that motivation is contagious.
I love it. Well, do you go back? I know you go back to Howard for homecoming and the mentor students.
I mentored some students at Howard. When I graduated, I went back to homecoming the next year. I didn't go back until 2019, which was the most amazing experience because that was my 10 year. I graduated in 2009. Okay. And so 2019, and so my dorm, Wheatley Hall, no air. The reason why me and my homegirls bonded so early, so quickly was because it was so hot in our rooms. The coolest area of the dorm was in the hallway. And so the first night we spent the night in the dorm, we all sat outside our dorm rooms just because that was the coolest place. And we all clicked. There was about 12 of us. And we still keep in touch. And so in 2019, we said, we're going to do this big reunion because we've met in little pockets here and there across the country. And so we got an Airbnb and we traveled from far and wide and all stayed in this Airbnb. It was nice. It wasn't dorm life.
Okay.
It was an upgrade. But it was that feeling all over again. And we did homecoming together in 2019. And it was the most magical experience. And it was just like, and then walking around and seeing how much the university has grown. There's new things everywhere, but still walking into the bookstore where the Starbucks is and being like, you all remember when, because nothing was digital. You had to go to the bookstore to get your books.
Yeah.
Order on Amazon. We didn't have Amazon. We barely had Wikipedia. We had to go to the bookstore. And so like walking around campus together, it was just magical.
Well, I thank you. I'm going to make sure, I've been telling you, I wanted to talk to my children, although Aaliyah has decided not to go to medical school. So
she might change her mind.
She may very well change her mind. So you've now you're down at Xavier University. So just kind of walk me through that, because I'm really loving the HBCU experience all the way throughout.
So when I saw the job posting for Ochsner, there was no mention of any of the schools that they represent. I just knew Ochsner was a powerhouse in New Orleans. And so I submitted my application. I had a preliminary interview with the director of our department. And in our conversation, he was like, yeah, because we need someone over at Dillard and Xavier. Is that something you would be interested in? And I think before he finished his sentence, I said, oh, yes, like sign me up. Where do I go? Because it wasn't until I was in Meharry, I always had this feeling where I wanted to teach, but I wanted to teach at an HBCU. I said, wherever I go, I need to be associated with an HBCU. When I was a first year at Meharry, I used to say, and this might happen years down the line, but I used to say, when I retire, I'm gonna come back and teach anatomy at Meharry. Like, I wanna be at an HBCU. Yeah. So they gave me that opportunity. And so my first year at Ochsner, I was at Dillard and Xavier, but now we have another position that came on, and he's at Dillard. So I'm at Xavier full time. And how it works is on Wednesdays, I have a half day for admin, but I spend 2 hours during that time at the university doing a training room or clinic for the athletes at the university. I cover their men and women's basketball and their women's volleyball games in person. And it's been the most amazing, because it brings me right back home to like feeling like I was at Howard. I mean, my lanyard with my work badge does say Howard, so they do know what's number one in my heart. But it's like, it's from the little things, and then there's bigger things. One of the little things I will say is they always laugh at me, but whenever there's a basketball game, you got to play the Star Spangled Banner. They always play the Whitney Houston version.
Okay.
And I just sit there and I'm like, you're not gonna get this at U of I, at Penn State, and it's playing, and I'm sitting there rocking, and I look around, everybody just kind of catching the Holy Ghost, because that you right. Your soul, right?
Yes.
And from things like that to just the other day, I was in the training room and there was a softball athlete, and she said, "You're the team doc?" I said, "Yeah." She was just like, "I've never met a Black female physician." And she's a pre-med major, because Xavier is still the #1 school of graduating Black people from medical school. They have more doctors that have graduated from undergrad at Xavier than any other university. So a lot of them are pre-med. So I get a chance to interact with the pre-med majors, and she was just like, "I've never met a Black female physician." And not the first, not the 100th, won't be the last time I hear that, but I get to interact with them on that level while they're still in undergrad and mentor them there. Because I would say the most challenging part is probably getting into med school. That's very challenging. And I don't think we do a good enough job of letting our undergraduates know just like what to prepare for and what you need to do to get there. But being able to interact with them in the training room and on that level, and and them telling me that they're inspired by seeing someone that looks like them do what I do, that makes it's in those moments that I'm like, this is why I do what I do, you know? And then on top of that, I've been very fortunate that this year there was the first HBCU Legacy Bowl, which was a football
yes.
which was a football game that they had training practices during the week, and then they had a game on that Saturday. And really, it was a chance to showcase some HBCU football players to NFL scouts. There were over 20 different teams represented at this game, and during their festivities through the week, I got to work that game, you know, and it's like, and that was another moment. I mean, being on the sidelines, it was just like, wow, you know, this is what I love sports medicine. I don't mind doing a lot of bigger and other stuff, but like being on the sidelines. And I have another event coming up at in the beginning of April. They're having the first HBCU All-Star game for basketball, where they're having an NBA, and these both were in New Orleans. They're having an NBA combine for HBCU athletes. They selected certain athletes in basketball, and they're going to have a combine during the week, and then they're going to have a game, which I'll work on that Sunday.
I need those dates. I mean, you bring my son down.
Yeah, it's on Sunday, April 3rd. But being on the sidelines, and a lot of HBCUs don't have big sports medicine departments. I will say Xavier is on a D1 level type situation. I don't know if you heard Master P's son attended an HBCU and ended up transferring because he said the medical care wasn't as great. So that's already lacking. And so a lot of these gentlemen are on the sidelines, and they've never had someone be as invested and care much about their physical and medical history as me and my colleagues that were also there at the game were. And they're sitting here like, you're the doc? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you really care? And I'm like, yeah, we care. What you need? I could do this, and, you know, giving them all this stuff. So it's just all these full circle moments. I'm so grateful that I still get to be tied into the HBC community the way that I have been.
Yeah, you know, I as you were talking, I was thinking about the one student that you said she had never seen a Black female physician before, or, you know, encounter one. And I know for myself, I seek out all of my doctors are Black, and I don't apologize for it, because I've had friends who say, well, why does it matter? It matters because they're gonna care more about my health and well-being than somebody else will.
If and they'll be able to empathize better because they understand the struggles that you're going through and the things you face. That happened to me here. So there's a new baby born every month in my department, right? And when I got down here, there was a OBGYN that graduated from Xavier, also graduated from Harry, and she's the chief of her department, and it's hard to get in with her. And so I asked my administrator, like, how do I get on her schedule? And she was like, oh, send her staff a message. Word must have got out. All these people were texting me like, oh, my OB's great. My GYN's great. And I'm like, thank you, but no, thank you. I'm gonna wait to see, you know, this doctor, because it makes a difference.
Yes.
It makes a big difference.
It does. It does. So what do you think, as having gone through this process, and I don't know what your experience was like, you know, growing up, whether or not you had a Black pediatrician or dentist or anything like that, or if you were, you know, influenced by, you know, someone to go into the medical field. But what do you think, I guess, can be done to not only encourage our children to consider the medical field and to not be afraid of, you know, medical school or anything of that nature, but to help increase the percentage of African Americans in the medical field, specifically women? We're talking about Women's History Month. But
it comes down to exposure. I was very fortunate in that being a Black doctor was not a foreign concept to me. My pediatrician was a Black woman, Dr. Latsu. I'll never forget her. Dr. Latsu, she was a Black woman. My dentist, Dr. Perry, over there on 87th, and I think Cornell was my dentist. When I needed braces, Dr. Perry sent me to Dr. Barnes. Dr. Barnes. And I can't think of They had to send me to another dental specialty. He was
Dr.
like,
McCollum,
probably.
oral
He was
surgeon on
like,
87th
yep,
and Cottage.
yep, yep. Two-story building, Dunkin'
Yep.
Donuts on the first
Yep.
floor.
Yep.
So and then on top of that, my mother worked in public health, and for the majority of my younger life worked at Roseland Health Clinic in Roseland. And so I going to work with her, there were Black doctors and dentists everywhere. So I was very fortunate to have that exposure, to not think it was a foreign concept that I could become a healthcare professional. Okay. So first thing is exposure. Another thing is, I always tell people, like, if you think either you or someone you know has an interest in something in the healthcare profession, reach out and let somebody know. Because there are so few, I think the percentage of Black physicians is like less than 3 or 2%. You know, because there's so few of us, we all kind of have bonded over being the only one that looks like us at some point. I went to Meharry, historically Black school, but when I did residency, I had patients there that had never seen a Black doctor. I had a lady, an older lady that I went to see, and she was so shocked that I was the doctor. And I was just, we had a moment. And I came in the next day and there were all these people in her room. And I thought she had died, because I was like, why is all this family here? And I go in and she's like, I called my grandkids up here to see you, because I don't think they've ever seen a Black doctor either. And I had to fuss her out because I thought she died, but I thought it was, I'm serious. There were about 8-10 people around her bed. And I was just like, and we had this moment. So we all know what it's like to be the minority of the minority of the minority, especially if you're a woman in the workplace and healthcare profession. And because of that, we're all looking for that next generation to pull forward, to see what can we offer them to make that journey a little easier, or just to give them guidance. And anytime anybody has reached out to me, I've never said no. I might say I'm a little busy, but we'll figure out a time to meet, to talk. And I know so many people like that. So if you want to be a dentist and you saw this Black dentist either on a commercial or you saw somebody told you about it, send that person a nice note and say, hey, can I shadow you? Can you offer me some words of advice? And I guarantee 99% of the time, we're going to be more than excited to say yes, because we're all trying to figure out how do we get more people that look like us in this field. And so by you taking the initiative to even just reach out, the worst they can say is no.
Right.
And that's nothing. Move on to the next. But 9 times out of 10, that person is going to say yes. Let's sit down and talk. Where are you? Who do you know? What do you want to do? What have you learned about? What have you been exposed to? So it all comes down to exposure and just meeting these people and seeing these people and having conversations with these people to show them that it's possible.
Now, as someone who's been in the profession and practicing for several years, do you have a mentor?
Oh, I have several.
Okay.
I have several mentors. When I was in med school, it was so funny. I originally wanted to go into orthopedic surgery, and I was telling my mentee this today. I said, if you were a Black orthopedic surgeon between like 2009 and 2014, when I was at Meharry, guarantee I emailed you. Okay, because I would go to conferences and meet people and make those connections. And I've had mentors from college, med school. I have mentors in other specialties that aren't in my specialty that I still keep in contact with, because even though I've kind of made it a little while, I still have a lot of longevity beyond me to go. And there's a lot of things I didn't learn, not just about the science of medicine, but about people and organization and administration and things like that I don't know. I didn't learn in residency and med school that there are other people that have done that, been there, done that they can still bestow that knowledge onto me. So I keep a pocket full of mentors, and they know I will reach out and pass them along and send other people to them. And that's a must.
Okay.
That's definitely a must.
What would you say has been, I guess, the greatest satisfactions thus far in your career?
It actually happened a couple weeks ago. So I'm the team doc at Xavier, and we had an athlete that she's pre-med major, and she transferred school, so she's a little off cycle for applying to med school. Mm-hmm. But she told me that she was applying for a research position at Meharry, and she needed a letter of recommendation. And I tell you, I bawled so hard crying, writing this letter of recommendation, because it was just, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Mm-hmm. It was my first time writing a letter of recommendation for someone. Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, for it to be for Meharry, was like full circle. And then to make it even more sweet, it's like a lot of in the professional world, a lot of it is about who you know. And that's why I always stress to people to network. And, you know, we always wonder how people end up where they end up. I was on a call for work, and majority white physicians. Mm-hmm. And our department chair was saying how there was a 4th-year medical school student at our hospital that was applying for orthopedic surgery. And he literally on the call with all the surgeons and doctors said, if you could just call your residency program and drop a good word, I'd appreciate that. I know some of you all haven't worked with this individual, but I can vouch for him. He's really good. If you could just call and drop a few words. And I'm glad my camera was off, because my face dropped. I was just like, that was bold. Mm-hmm. For you to ask someone that has never met this individual to do a favor for this individual on their behalf. Mm-hmm. And I could tell this was a regular occurrence. I mean, it's happened more times, and it was just like, that's how they do it. Mm-hmm. And so when I wrote this letter to Meharry, I went in on, you know, talking about the university and this student and how their characteristics and drives align, because I knew so much about Meharry and I knew this individual. And I read the letter and I was just like, wow. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't a run of the mill. She's great. Her GPA is this. She's volunteered here. You know, go right there. It was very personal. It was very obvious that I knew what the school stood for. Mm-hmm. And how she aligned with that. And so it felt very impactful to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. For someone else. Mm-hmm. And that was the full circle. I literally cried like when I finished that letter and I sent it to her, because when you're in med school and when you're going through the journey, you don't think about this day. It's a distant thought. It's mm-hmm. like one day. And now I'm here. And then on top of that, I have fun every day at work. If you would have told me when I was in med school to describe my dream job, that statement on that dream job wouldn't be anywhere near as cool as what I do now. Mm. I absolutely love my job. I crack up with my mom. We have this joke. I wear heels to work every day, but mm-hmm. I drive in like tennis shoes or flip-flops. Mm-hmm. And so when I get to work, I tell her, oh, here comes the hardest part of my day. And she'll be like, what? I'm like, putting on my shoes. I'm 100% sincere in saying the harder part of my day is putting on my shoes in the car, because I love what I do. I love being able to impact people. I had a lady the other day, one of my first patients, she came in, she had a really large knee effusion. She was in a lot of pain. Elderly lady had a cane. Mm-hmm. She came in just waddling with that cane, and I aspirated her knee, put a little medicine in there, and I walked out the room and I was sitting at my desk, and she left, and I see my assistant chasing her down the hallway. She's like, ma'am, you forgot your cane. This lady came in feeling so miserable. And when she left,
oh wow,
she left her cane. She just walked out. And that happens a lot. There are days where I do something for someone, and either that day or when I see them at a follow-up, and they're a completely different person. And I can't describe that feeling. It's like, this is how I would describe it. If somebody walked up to you and was like, I'm about to pay off all your loans. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
You would just be like, like in shock, disbelief, excitement, gratitude. Like I feel all those emotions.
Yeah.
At least once a day, I get that rush of emotion of just like, wow.
That's
wow.
great. Very many people can, well, not very many people can say that they are excited about their job, their career, or, that they're happy. So I think that is just absolutely wonderful that you could say that. But I need to see you apparently, because I had a situation where I was literally crawling up the stairs when I came back from my vacation from Cabo in pain, like I needed a cane.
I got you.
But you know what? When you were talking, I just want to go back when you were talking about the greatest highlight. Just listening to you, how you talk about being able to write that letter of recommendation. The one thing that came to my mind, honestly, I thought about your parents, because I thought about the values that they've instilled in you, and the fact that, though you're successful in your career, you are still willing and desire to give back and help other people. I just think that that's great, because sometimes we can forget where we came from and forget how we got in certain positions, and then aren't necessarily willing, to help someone else. So I'm sure you're going to keep that same, spirit about yourself, but I just really wanted to highlight that, because that was moving and touching to me. And so you got to keep me posted on whether or not she gets into Meharry. That would be just absolutely wonderful. And I know we're kind of running a little bit short on time today, so I do want you to come back to talk, because I want to get into actually the field of sports medicine, and I'm just curious to know, do you see yourself continuing down this road of strictly focusing in on sports medicine, or do you have any desire to kind of look at any other areas of specialty, or is it too late for that?
It's not too late. People always go back and do different fellowships. I would never go back to residency again. But, not really. I think about what type of things make me happy, what I feel happy doing, the time commitment for doing what makes me happy. I knew when I applied for residency that I need an 8 to 5. I was like, my best friend is a hospitalist. She works 7 days on, 7 days off. She loves it. But sometimes when we're on the phone at 7:30 at night, she has to get off the phone because the nurses at the hospital are calling her. I say, absolutely not. When I get home at 5 o'clock, I want to be able to check out, be home, and not worried about anything. But I think about that a lot, especially now, because so many people like push, having multiple streams of income and having your own business, and doing that and doing this. And outside of sports medicine and mentoring people, there's really not much else that I think would give me as much fulfillment as I get with what I do now. I don't even want to use the word content, because a lot of times content means, everything's okay, status quo, and you're fine. Things are really good. I like my field because it's always evolving. There's always new things to learn. That's the one thing about medicine. It's an infinite amount of knowledge. So you're always learning. There's always someone to take care of. There'll always be athletes. There's always students at the university. I think having the setup of being in the clinic and being able to work with the university is what I wanted to do. And I really enjoy what I do. I get to use my ultrasound machine every day. I do lots of cool procedures. I feel bad sometimes when I talk to some of my friends and they talk about their jobs and they're not happy, and I'm kind of like, and then it rubs off on those around me too, because my assistant, she worked at another institution for a while before she came to Ochsner. And I remember when I interviewed her, I told her, I said, She ironically went to University of Miami too. So combined it over that. But I told her, I was like, look, and this is part of why, because I've been through too much. I've been in school too long. I have struggled. I have suffered too much and too long to be at a job that I don't like. So we have to have fun every single day. Every day we come in here, we have to be in good spirits. We have to be in a good mood, and we have to enjoy what we do. And she told me a couple months ago that she was out to eat with some of her former coworkers, and they were going around the table saying, complaining about their jobs. And they got to her and she was just like, no, I'm good. I like my job. And they were like, no, complain. And she was like, no, I don't have anything to complain about. Because we do amazing work. I get to meet some of the most fascinating people. And it's fun, I get to dress up every day. I love my shoes. I get to dress up, they always know when I'm coming because I click clack down the hall. People stick their head out there. Is that Dr. Good? And it's just, it never fails, especially in this spring. I've had a lot of young Black male athletes come in because basketball season is ending and they're getting their injuries taken care of. And at least 3 times, I come in because I told you I wear a Howard lanyard for my ID badge. They go, you went to Howard? And I said, yes, I did. And they're like, we just visited there, or he's thinking about going there. And I'm like, okay, let me check out your knee first. And then when that's over, we sit down. I'm like, okay, so tell me, what other schools are you? I get to do that during my day job.
That's awesome, Shannon.
And so it's just like, I really couldn't see myself like just switching careers like that. I really like what I do.
That is awesome. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
Because I'm gonna tell you, a lot of us can't say that. Not saying that I don't enjoy what I do, because I love what I do. And it is, when you find something that you are truly passionate about, it shows in everything that you do. I think I have to be honest with you, during this whole college application process, I think my children's friends and their parents probably were annoyed with me, because all I want to talk about is, let me help you get this spreadsheet together and let's look at this, because I get excited about education, specifically higher ed. That's
how it should be. And that's why I credit my parents. When I got to Howard in August 2005. I knew I was graduating in May 2009. There was no question. There was no question. And it wasn't even, I don't want to say it was like an arrogance or anything like that, but even when I was little, I knew I was going to graduate college. I might not have known what my major was going to be. I didn't know where I was going to go, but there was never any anxiety behind going to college, because it had been instilled in me at such a young age that it was just the next thing to do. Now, what I do after college might have been, unsure, but because of my parents and how they raised me and what they instilled in me, going to college was easy. I mean, there were hard classes, but it wasn't challenging, because I knew that was just the next step in my timeline, and I knew I was going to graduate. And then when I got to Meharry, that was a little scary at first, because I hadn't known my whole life I was going to go to med school. But my parents are very, if you're going to start something, you got to finish it. So, once I got into like second, third year med school, it was like, well, I got to see this through, but having that excitement, at that age, makes it so much easier to go and succeed at college, because you're not worried about if I can or cannot do it. You have somebody in your corner that's like, oh, that's the least of your worries.
Right?
That's nothing. I know it's 4 years down the line, but that's behind me. I'm already out here, because you're going to go, you're going to be successful, you're going to graduate, and you're going to do well. When you have someone telling you that and instilling that in you, it makes it completely different. It makes college that much more enjoyable, because now you can kind of enjoy, because you're not stressing yourself. There are times, but when it's innate in you, just like it's like, I went to kindergarten, I went to high school, I went to college. That's how my parents raised me, and that's what made me turn out the way I turned out.
Well, they did an excellent job with you, Shannon. Dr. Shannon Goode. So I'm going to get on your calendar. We'll have to, match our calendars up. I want to have you back so that we could go a little bit more in depth. But what's the percentage again of
I know it's less than 5%. It changes. I think it's like 2 to 3% of Black physicians.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely got to do something about that.
And it's so crazy. You go to these, and outside of going to the Student National Medical Association or the Medical Association conferences, which are the medicine bodies for minorities, you go to these regular medical conferences, it's like amazing that there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people there, and you're still like, where's somebody that looks at me like me?
Yeah.
And it never fails. There's always the meetup of the minority group, and there's like 30 of us in there, and there's 5,000 people at this conference.
Wow.
So we got a long way to go, but I feel encouraged that number is going to climb. I do.
Yeah.
That's one of my missions right now. It's like, I'm a sports medicine doctor, but I also got to get more people that look like me into this profession.
Right.
So.
Right. You're absolutely right. And when they get in the profession, people, will you please select them as your physician?
Right.
Because I love my doctor, Dr. Berry, all of my doctors. I just absolutely love, and my children's pediatrician. I mean, I have, my best friend is an orthodontist, Dr. Griffin Barres, who is Dr. Barnes' niece, as a matter of fact. But so my children have also been able, that's Auntie Bonnie to them, but they've been able to watch her. So I think what you mentioned about exposing our children to individuals in the profession can really go a long way. And by them hearing that it's not as challenging as they think it is.
My mom used to tell me, it's not impossible. When I would, and it used to make me so upset. I'd be crying about a test or something, and she would say, Shannon, it's not impossible, because people have done it before you.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was like in residency that I was like, oh wow, like that's true. And that's what I tell all my mentees. Like, it's not easy, it's not for everybody, but it's not impossible.
Right. So what closing words do you have for our listening and viewing audience?
I would say, if you're pursuing something, whether it's a degree, a job, or whatever, I think one of the most important things that you should have is a support system. You should have a few people that are in your corner that believe in you. And it's because I went through this. There are times where you will not believe in yourself. And you get through because of your support system who still believe in you. My mom and I talk about this all the time. There were moments where I had epic meltdowns on not being able to make it. And she would just, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. And to this day, she'll tell me, oh yeah, when that happened, it was in one ear and out the other, because I knew you'd make it. It was her or my dad or my grandmother or friends that, would carry me through those periods where I doubted myself and I didn't believe in myself. It was their belief in me that got me through. And so, you don't have to go through things like this alone, and even better if you have a strong support system.
Excellent advice and words of wisdom to close out this segment. So I thank you so very much, Dr. Goode, for taking time out of your day to talk to me and sharing your journey and your experience. I am looking forward to having you back on as a guest.
Forward to be back.
Yes, you are like one of our very own folks who's doing great things. So make sure you come back and see those students over at Morgan Park when you come to town too.
Yes, of course.
So thank you everyone for tuning in this week for Light It Up. Make sure you like and share this episode. And join me next week to find out who my next guest will be. In the meantime, make sure you continue to light it up and shine bright like a diamond. Thanks for joining me this week on Light It Up. Make sure you visit my website at www.lightituppodcast.com or www.aginahmuhammad.com. You can also find me on social media using the handle @LightItUpPodcasts. If you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time, light it up and shine bright like a diamond.